this is Jamie Magrich. I want to make this card with you today. It's using lots of lavender by Stampin' Up, and then I'm going to use the Just a Note from Flourishing Phrases from Stampin' Up. 90% of what I'm using is Stampin' Up today. There's two exceptions. One is the deckled edge rectangle by Spellbinders. It's the largest one in that set. Zig Clean Color Real Brush Marker, and this one is Shadow Mauve to do the shadows around the edge. I'll show an alternative as well. And a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. Everything else is Stampin' Up. So put this to the side over here. I'm also going to be using Memento ink for my black, Stampin' Up Fresh Fig, Pear Pizzazz, Pacific Point, and maybe a little bit of Pool Party for the shadow. Okay, the card base itself is 8.5 by 5.5. It's a heavyweight cardstock. It's scored at 4 1/4. And then we'll fold that, put it aside. Scrap. That one is the scrap. And make sure your scrap piece to stamp on is at least big enough for your die. So I just took a 1/4 sheet of cardstock. This piece is Stampin' Up. And then I have the Bristol Smooth, so I might do one of each to show you. Then the other pieces we need for the layering, I have a 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inch piece of Night of Navy. I have a 5 1/4 by 4 inch piece of Night of Navy DSP. This one is probably a retired piece, but I know there's some similar in the new pads that just came out. So, and then I have a 3 by 5 3 5/8 by 4 5/8 piece of white, and another piece of Night of Navy, which is 4 1/2 by 3 1/2. There. And then I have a strip of the DSP paper. It's a 6 by 6 sheet, so when you cut it down to the 5 1/4, you're left with a 3/4 inch strip, so we're going to use that to decorate with. We'll need some dimensionals, some adhesive, and a bunch of assorted clear blocks to stamp with. So let's place this layers aside for now. The first thing I'm going to do is take the scrap pieces of white, and I'm going to stamp the lavender stamp, this one, with the Memento ink. Okay, let me do it on the Bristol too. Oh, that is the Bristol. Let me do it on the Stampin' Up too, so I have one ready. So I have my ink in the center. And to do the lavender part, On the original card I used some colors that are retired, so I had to come up with alternative. So this is the fresh fig, and I'm going to stamp off once, so ink it up, stamp off on some scrap paper. I have to stand up so I can line it up, and it's not going to matter if it lines up perfectly, just stamp it in. The stamp it kind of looks better when it's not perfect because it's a watercolor look. It doesn't have quite enough, so let's try it again on this one. Must not have inked it up well enough. Much better. Just try it again. Oh, I see why I'm off of my mat. I have the little silicone mat underneath there. I just had the paper here so you could see what I was doing, but we'll move it. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to take a water brush or a colorless blender. Stampin' Up blender pen, and we're going to squeeze the ink pad so we get some ink onto the top of it. Use the blender pen or one of the water brushes. We're going to fill in some of these spots a little bit darker that didn't stamp, just to add a little bit of variation in color. There's some spots that you miss, or it was designed to have some holes in it. It just looks a little bit better with a little bit of variation of color. It's here or there. Do this one too. This one I got pretty well on. And then just scribble off the colors, the color pen. Alright, now we're done with this color. And then we're going to go to the green. I have Pear Pizzazz here. And I have the leaf on both sides. Just do one at a time. Just ink it up. Line it up with your leaves. Stamp it down. This one does not need stamped off. It's a nice color. Turn it over and do the other leaves. And then I have the stem for the bottom. Okay, then I'm done with the green. Now I'm going to use the Pacific Point to do the bow. And don't worry if you don't get it lined up completely. We'll use the blender pen to blend it out. You don't even need any extra color. You don't want to rub too hard on this Stampin' Up paper because it'll pill it. But this way it adds just a little bit of shading almost on it. Okay, then scribble that off. Oh, how to get green ink on there. Alright, then we want to stamp the sentiment, and you want to make sure that you're stamping it within your rectangle. So I kind of laid the rectangle over the top like this so I'd know where I can stamp it. I want it to be over in this corner. And I'm going to get the Memento ink. Make sure it's the right side up. I don't put the stickers on the back of my clear mount stamps because they stick to my blocks better. Very nice. Let's do the other one. Oh, I got those green spots in there. I will make the best of it. In the vicinity. Perfect. Okay. Now I'm going to take them over, line this up on them, tape it down with a Post-it note, and run it through my Big Shot. I'll be right back. Where's the card? Here's the card. One thing I do want to point out, if you didn't get your greeting stamped straight, you can use this deckled edge, run it through at a little bit of an angle to straighten out the greeting. See, like here, it's not quite straight, so if I run it like that, it'll cut out with the greeting straight. Alright, now we're going to do the shadow part. There's a couple different techniques. You can use the blender pen and a light ink or a water brush. And a light ink. Water brush, and I don't know where it went. Or the other option is an alcohol, clear alcohol pen, and so I'll show you all three options. So I'm squeezing the ink into the top of my pad. With the water brush, I'm going to thin it out pretty thin. I don't want too much water though, because especially with the Stampin' Up paper, it'll warp the paper. And you want to just go around the edges with this light color. Try to blend it out a little bit. I'll put a little drop of water on my table so I can blend. You want it darker towards the image and going lighter out towards the edge. And it doesn't matter if it's neat. It almost looks better if it's not, because it's a watercolor image. Get in these little spaces here. This is Memento ink. It's not a waterproof ink, so if it pulls a little bit, pulls a little gray, it just adds to the shadow effect. Okay. There's that one. I have a couple little spots of green on there, so I think I'm going to add a few more just to make it look right. So I'm going to ink up my water brush, tap it, I can get any green spots. I purposely just touch a few here or there. Way to correct an error. Okay, wipe out my brush. Okay. Well, I'm going to use my little squeegee towel to wipe this out. So I want to add that extra water into my pad. Not that it matters, but quite a bit of water there. Okay. Now let me show you a couple other techniques. On the Bristol paper, I want to show you this one with the alcohol. And I'm going to use the Pool Party ink. This time I'm not going to squeeze it into the top because I don't want to introduce the alcohol into my ink pad. I'm going to squish it onto, this is a glass tile I bought at the hardware store for a couple dollars. This is the alcohol blending pen or colorless blender. This particular one is one I bought at Barnes & Noble. It's a student series, but you can use any one. And you're just going to use the blender pen to pick up some of the ink, and then you're going to just swirl it around the edges. And as you go out, as the ink runs out, go out and cover that edge a little bit, and it'll make it fog out so that it looks a little bit more blended. I don't have the alcohol ink pens. The one thing you do have to be careful of is that this will travel, so you don't want to get too close to your edges because sometimes it'll go over the edges. But if you don't care, it doesn't matter. Go ahead and do a little bit out here just to the circular motion helps to keep from getting the streaks. I prefer to go pretty lightly around the bow so it doesn't blend into the background or bleed into the background. It gets fuzzy. Okay, a little more onto this, just a note. Okay, now the Zig marker would do very similar. I have one that's not color already. Which one was the zig? I'll just show you. The zig marker is a water-based marker, and I usually draw like a line around the edge and then just blend it out a little bit. But it is water-based, so it will leave a little bit harder of the lines. So, and then if you want it to blend out more, you can use your water brush to pull it out a little bit more. My preferred choice is with this alcohol blender. I haven't as yet purchased the alcohol markers from Stampin' Up, so I was trying to come up with an alternative of something that I already had. Okay, clean this up. Alright, now let's assemble the card. We're going to take the smaller of the two, let me put this white paper down so you can see, of the two blue pieces. We're going to take this strip, and we're going to, about a third of the way from the bottom, we're going to glue this across. It's longer than it needs to be, so then we'll just trim it off with our scissors. And you don't need much glue, just a very little bit. I prefer the tape runner, but I don't have a Stampin' Up one, so. Make sure it's straight. Down. Turn it over to the back side and trim off the overhang. Okay, then we're going to put dimensionals on the back of our colored piece, and you can use whichever one you prefer. I like them both, they both came out neat. I might as well use this one with a green speckle, it's kind of different. Where's my dimensionals? There they are. I put one in each corner and then one in the center. To take the back off, the easiest way I found is to push on it with your thumb. It kind of pops up that little corner. Makes it easy to grab onto. We're going to center this on this blue piece. Okay. Then we're going, I probably should have glued the blue piece onto the white piece first. I do that every time. A little glue on the back of the smaller of the blue pieces to go onto the white piece. Again, not a lot of glue, otherwise it'll ooze out and it'll end up all over your fingers sticky. And I have this design so it just has an 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Just a tiny little bit of a border. Okay. And then these two pieces, we're going to glue the DSP onto the other Night of Navy piece. Again, there's just going to be that 1/8 of an inch border. Okay, this piece will get glued centered on there. You could dimensional this one too if you wish to. And then we're going to glue this onto the card base, and again there's going to be a little bit of a border. Then the last step is to add a couple jewels onto here. And I just have some from my stash, some older, I've had them for a while. I just put one on each of these, but I might put two because this strip is a little bit wider. Yeah, I think it needs two. One on each corner. You could use the clear ones and color them with your alcohol markers. There we go, and that's our finished card. Well, thank you for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day.